What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Video, back with another Reaper Format video. If you don't know Reaper Format, the format held SJC Long Beach 2006, March 2006, using the October 2005 ban list, and a card pool going up to Shadow of Infinity, which includes things like Treeborn Frog and Pot of Avarice. And, honestly, the card pool editions aren't really what make this format what it is. What makes it what it is the ban list, which really did change it a lot from GOAT format and Cyber format. The Trinity is gone. You don't have BLS, things like that. And that means that decks that had a lower power level in GOAT format can sort of rise up and be dominant here. Of course, it also means that Stein OTK is still very good because Stein can go into things like Cyber End Dragon or Cyber Twin Dragon and go for a big damage push like that. But it also does mean that, other decks do get to rise. Now, a deck that doesn't necessarily get to rise, but gets to sort of maintain its tier 1 status is Warriors. Warriors are pretty good in this format. I do think that I personally prefer Bazoo Return to Warriors. I do think Bazoo Return does a lot of similar things to Warriors, but that also has the explosivity of Return from the Different Dimension late game. But I do think that this Warrior deck is pretty good. You can get out a lot of damage really quickly. It can trade favorably with Monarchs if you're using things like DD Assailant to banish them. And, it's just a pretty good matchup, pretty good deck. I mean, it still operates in a similar way to how it did in Cyber format and GOAT format. Doing a lot of the same things, just going for big guys and getting in for damage. It doesn't use Blade Knight in this format, probably because Cyber Dragon is around. Although I could see some version of the deck using Blade Knight. This version that I'm using was piloted by a deleted user in a previous tournament, and they did very well with it. I think this was their build. So, let me know again, if this was a build that was originally someone else's that they sort of piloted to success, but I do think it was their build. So, this build is pretty good. I liked what I saw here, so I decided to play it myself. Going through the card by card, we got a Break the Magical Warrior, just a way to remove back row, also a big guy. We got triple Cyber Dragon to get the aggressive pressure going. We've got triple DD Assailant to banish big monsters. We've got a DD Warley to do much of the same. We got a Don's Luke to rip cards out of hand. We got an Exiled Force to pop our opponent's stuff. We got a Wang Hu to deal with things like Scapegoat, but also Treeborn Frog, so that's very important here. We got double Kike the Ghost Destroyer to deal with Treeborn Frogs, and a variety of other decks like Chaos. We've got a Mystic Swordsman level 2 to search off Rhoda to get rid of set monsters. We've got a Sangan to search out most of our deck, and we've got triple Spirit Reaper as well to wall up a bit, and also potentially get in for some hand rips. For the spells, we got a Book of Moon, we got a Comfy, we've got a Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, MST, Knock. Knock is good in the main deck here because you want to be getting aggressive. So if your opponent is setting, you want to knock away that set, get in for damage. We got a Premature Burial here to bring back our stuff. We got double Rhoda to search out what we need. We got triple Smashing Ground to clear our opponent's monsters. We got a Snatch Shield to take our opponent's monsters. For the traps, we got a Bottomless Trap Hole, which can be good against if your opponent brings out something off Cyberstein, or if they bring out a Monarch. We got a Call the Honda to bring back our stuff. We've got triple Psycho to Armor to deal with our opponent's attacking monsters. We got triple Judgment to stop anything that our opponent might be doing. And we've got a Trench Tribute to wipe the board. For the side deck, we got double Dust Shoot in case we know we're going first. And also, if we're up against Monarchs, this is a very, very good thing to bring in. We got triple Threatening Roar in case we're up against an OTK deck. We got triple Mask Restrict in case we're up against Monarchs. We got triple Dust Tornado to clear our opponent's back row. We got another Bottomless Trap Hole if we're on a deck that's playing a bunch of big beaters. We've got another Mystic Swordsman level 2 if we're up against a deck that's playing flips. We've got a Death Wombat here in case we're against Burn. And we got Inject and Fair Lily if we need to get even more aggressive. If your deck is here mainly for show, you're not really going to be going into this thing, so I didn't really take the time to adjust it to be more like what you'd have with a toolbox. But like, if you do need any of the fusion monsters not listed here, then you can potentially just proxy them in, because in this format we do play with an unlimited fusion deck, so you can go beyond the 15 cards that you've got here on DB. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. I think this deck is really cool. Now, as a note, I'm not the best at piloting Warriors. There are plenty of players who are much more skilled than I, so I definitely think that I probably make some mistakes over the course of the games that I'm going to show for you. But, that's why I do these sorts of things in retroactive analysis, because I can hopefully go over some of the misplays that I made so you can learn from them and adjust your own play in the future. But without further ado, let's dive into the games. Okay, we had our first game here against Mildly So Gerbil. If you can get them channel, always a pleasure to have them on. And this game will hopefully show how good the deck can do against some sort of non-meta options. So we're going to be going second here because we did lose the die roll. But that's a really good hand. We got Wang Hu, we got Kaiku, so big beaters. We got Premat in case they rip any of these out of hand. We got Call, we got TT, so we're feeling pretty good about this. Our opponent is going to bring out an Ultimate Insect level 3, set 1 and pass. This, to me, tells me that they're on an Insect deck, maybe on the Wind deck as well. So that might be a Miyabi set that we have to worry about. But even if it is Miyabi, I feel pretty good about this overall. We realized after the fact that they forgot to do a first turn draw, but it didn't really change much here. So we're just going to bring out a Wang Hu, try attacking in to the Ultimate Insect level 3, bait out removal. They do have the Widespread Ruin here, so that will be able to deal with the Wang Hu. And we're actually going to set TT Call and Judgment here and pass back to them. And the reason for this is if they go into an Ultimate Insect level 5 here, I like the option of going for TT because we don't really have a good way to deal with that. So the TT will get used up in standby phase, so we don't really need to worry about heavy in that case. And if they heavy our Solemn and Call, that's a bit unfortunate, but I do think it's ultimately fine. I like having Call here because we can use Wang Hu as potentially like, interruption. If they go for like a last will play here, we activate Call, bring back Wang Hu, and then they've got a bit of an awkward spot to be in off that will. So they are indeed going to go for will, and we're going to chain Call the Haunted to the will. So now if they bring out a monster, unless it has 1500 attack, then, the Wang Hu will indeed pop it. So I feel pretty good about this play. They're going to bring out a monster and just pop it, get 2 insects engraved, so they will be able to banish 2 for a Doom Dozer here. We don't really have a good way to out that Doom Dozer, so we are just going to use the Solemn on that, drop down to 4,000. But I think this is ultimately okay. They go for a pre-mat here. They can't bring back the Doom Dozer that wasn't properly summoned, but they can bring back this Ultimate Insect level 5, which is a bit unfortunate. But I do think that we ultimately played that turn pretty well for what it was. And our opponent's going to get over the Wang Hu, just deal 600 because this Ultimate Insect level 5 was not summoned off the effect of level 3. They're going to set 1 pass back to us. We draw a Sangan here. That's a pretty good draw, but we're just going to set the pre-mat pass. If they go for heavy here, then they have to wipe out their own pre-mat, which I'm happy about. And if they have MST, they just set MST here, pop our pre-mat when you activate it anyways, so it doesn't really matter there. They're going to flip up this rat, attack over the Sangan with the level 5. We're going to search out an Exiled Force to pop the level 5 there. They're going to attack him with Rat for 14. We dropped really low down to 2,000, which does happen after you go for a Solemn play. But I do think it ultimately was the correct thing to do. We're going to go for Exiled Force, popping that level 5. And now we could potentially just leave things as they are and not pay for the premature burial here. Because if they do have MST, then they can just MST it, and then we just basically hard lose to that giant rat on field. But I do think that is good just to bring out the Wang Hu and try and get aggressive here. We could also bring out the Force, but I think the Force is a bit awkward because if they have any other monster in hand, they probably win if we bring back Force. So we kind of have to play into battle traps if they do have them. We did see the Widespread Ruin from them earlier. But, again, like, we're in an awkward enough spot that if they do have a battle trap back there, then I think we probably lose either way. So I just go for the Wang Hu here. And I just pass. So this does play around the battle traps and also does prevent them from getting too aggressive with the rat here. So I think this is ultimately fine, but it does lose to certain things. Like Call the Haunted will definitely do it, but to be fair, Call the Haunted would also, cause us to lose the game even if we got back that exiled. So yeah, unfortunately, it did not quite work out for us there. But I do think it was a pretty good game overall. Something else we could have done is we could have gone for DD Warrior Lady, attacked into the Ultimate Insect level 5, taken 8 from that, but then banished both, and then gone for a pre-mat for the Wang Hu. But I feel like that would have been a bit too much hindsight, honestly. And I feel like if they had a battle trap there, then the play that we did was definitely correct. So very, very intense game 1, though, even though it did end pretty quickly. And, that does show one of the risks of Solemn Judgment, but I do think we played that probably the best that we could have. So we are going to go for a Comfy here. Comfy in the opener is really good. And we see Creature Swap, Giant Rat, Widespread Ruin, Doom Dozer, and Ultimate Insect level 3. That's a bit of a tricky hand to deal with. But ultimately what we decide to do here is we decide to take the Widespread Ruin because I'm sort of mapping out the next couple turns of play. And I'm like, well, okay, we've got removal. We can deal with Doom Dozer with the Bottomless Trap Hole or the TT. We've got Smashing Ground for the Rat or the level 3. We got a bunch of stuff here. But what I really want to be doing here eventually is to go for Spirit Reaper attack in and deal 300 to them and rip a card out of hand. I would really like to get that going at some point, and Widespread Ruin does stop that plan. And since I do have enough removal to deal with everything else in hand, really, I'm fine just taking the Ruin and freeing them from getting that off. We're going to set a TG, set a Bottomless, pass back to them. We don't want to set the Reaper here because we don't want them to just summon out the Rat, go for Creature Swap, and then we have to defend the Rat the entire time. So I'd rather just leave no cards on my side of the field. So they're going to bring out an Ultimate Insect level 3 and attack in for 14. We are perfectly fine with that. And they're just going to pass back to us. I feel pretty good about this, especially when we draw Rhoda. Our initial plan was just summon out Reaper, go for Smashing, and hit in for 3. Maybe not the best plan, but it does rip a card out of hand. If they bring out Rat just to attack into Reaper here, we got Exiled Force to pop that. So I feel ultimately okay about this plan, but the Rhoda does change a lot. So we're going to go for the DD Warrior Lady here. Deprive them of getting an Insect Engrave for the Doom Dozer there. So Yeah, we just want that out of our hair. We don't want to have to worry about it. We can save the bottomless for something else. Then you can go for the rat here. We are perfectly fine with this. It'll attack in for 14. We got smashing to deal with the rat later. And we draw Saku as well, so that's pretty good too. We're going to bring out the Reaper, go for the smashing on the rat, attack in for 3, and rip a card out of their hand. So we feel pretty good about this play overall. And we hit the Doom Dozer. Okay, I'm pretty happy about that. It does get an insect engrave, but ultimately I think it's okay to rip that out of the hand. They're going to think about this play a bit. They're going to set 2, set 3, pass back to us. Oh, also I should explain the reason I didn't set Saku last turn is because we do have bottomless, we do have Torrential Tribute. So if they get in for a ton of damage over Reaper, we do have ways to stop that. But if they don't, we get Exile's Force to pop whatever they bring out, and then we can rip another card of their hand with the Reaper next turn. So they're going to set 3 pass, and now we can just rip that last card out of hand if they don't have a Battle Trap here. And it looks like they do not, so we're going to rip that Ultimate Insect level 5 out of hand, set a Typhoon, set a Saku, pass back to them. I feel like they're probably not going to heavy their own board like this. So I feel like it's ultimately pretty fine. They're going to go for smashing on our Reaper, go for the pre-mat on the level 5. We use MST here. I could have potentially saved the MST and just gone for a bottomless on whatever they brought out here anyways. Because especially if they're playing like Skill Drain, the Skill Drain version of this deck is annoying for Warriors to deal with. But I do think that the MST here was fine. Yeah, I just think that bottomless probably would have been better in most cases. It does also deprive them of 2 insects engrave if we go for bottomless here. So if they do draw into Doom Dozer, they can't bring it out. You could argue that we could save the bottomless for that Doom Dozer that they draw eventually. But yeah, I do think that bottomless probably would have been the pick here. But we draw Kaiku, so we're just rewarded for our play anyways. We're going to bring out the Kaiku, attack in for 18, banish 2 from grave. We're going to banish the level 5 and the rat here. We could have banished the Doom Dozer as well, but Kaiku prevents Doom Dozers from coming out anyways, and if we manage to hit in again with the Kaiku, then we can rip that Doom Dozer out of grave anyways. I'd rather do this than have them draw into like call, bring back the rat, and complicate things for us further. So I feel ultimately okay about this. They bring out a rat here. They go for a creature swap on our Kaiku, the Ghost Destroyer, and now they'll attack into the rat. We're going to go for a Saku there. This is a bit awkward because our rat is still on field, but we do have bottomless and TT here, so I feel pretty good about this situation overall. We're going to attack him with the rat. We're not committing the Exiled Force at any point, even though it does accelerate the clock a bit, because we want to save that for if they bring out a monster here. I do feel that TT and bottomless are generally good enough to protect against most things that they do, unless they draw like heavy off the top. They're going to bring out a Doom Dozer here, and, no, they don't bring out the Doom Dozer, they can't summon that out. They're just going to admit defeat because they see the writing on the wall. So, yeah, going into game 3, we are in a pretty good spot here. I don't think I really changed too much in the siding. Overall, I feel like this deck is generally pretty good against most rogue picks. I do think that this sort of insect build is a rogue pick. I do have my own version of insects that I will be showing off on the channel later that I am excited to show off because I think it is really fun and maybe is tier 2 or higher. But I think, playing with the rats and the howling insects and stuff, it is neat. But I feel like you're just playing too many dead cards that can search out other cards, to be fair. But like, you generally want to have higher quality of cards, I think, in Reaper format than in other formats because Stein OTK is a deck that's running around. If you're not playing a ton of high quality cards, then that deck can just run you over, even if you do have recruiters. So I have a different version of the insect build that I will be showing off later. But we just go for an Exile on the set here because I figure it probably is some sort of recruiter or something, and luckily it is. If it was like a Sangan or something, we do have Dust Shoot to rip a card out of hand next turn. So I feel pretty fine about this. We're just going to set a Saku in the Dust Shoot, and then we're going to go for Dust Shoot here and get a peek at what they're working with here. See, they've got a level 5, a rat, a Doom Dozer, and a Kamakiri here, plus the Last Will. That Last Will does occasionally complicate things here. It does make our Saku a little bit worse, but if they Last Will in main 2, then it's not really that big of a deal. I think what we want to send back here is the Kamakiri, because we don't want another Insect Engrave to trigger the Doom Dozer there. So we send back the Kamakiri, leave the rat. We could have also taken the Will just to prevent them from doing combo plays later. But I feel like this is ultimately fine. If they go for like rat here, we can just let that go through. We can smashing it later. Or we can Saku it now if we want to, I guess. If they go for Will in like main 2, we can just smash them whatever they bring out because they're not really a good thing to bring out off Will here. So they do go for Will. They bring out the ultimate is like level 3, and that's perfectly fine. We can attack over that. We got MST for the back row as well. I was just planning on running out Assailant or Kaiku attacking into the level 3, and if they do have a back row for it, I've got smashing for that. But with the MST, we can just go for the MST on that back row, attack in with Kaiku here, and banish the rat and the insect from grave. So they can't even set up their Doom Dozer plays, even if they somehow manage to clear Kaiku. So we're going to pass back to them. No need to bluff the smashing ground set. They're just going to set one pass back to us. I could potentially go for an Assailant here, but I think it's fine just hitting in with Kaiku every turn. Like, setting the Assailant is something I could do for setup later, but I don't want Dark Hole to completely blow us out, and I feel like we're in a really, really good spot here. I'm not afraid of losing anytime soon with a level 5 and a Doom Dozer in their hand. So even if I did set the Assailant to then flip it up on the following turn and try going for a bigger play there, I still feel like that's a little bit greedy into Dark Hole or TT, and we just sit on this Kaiku, pass. Call also provides a bit of defense here, so I feel really good about this. We're just going to set the call pass back to them. They are going to set one pass back to us. We draw a bottomless trap hole. We're just going to keep attacking in for 18. And, you know, they do have Saku for that, but yeah, I still feel pretty fine about this. We can set the Assailants at the bottom trap hole, pass back to them, and they are going to set one pass back to us. And we feel perfectly fine about this. We draw Snatch Steal, so it's just getting even better for us. We flip up the Assailant. We attack in for 17. That will go through. And we're just going to pass back to them. Again, we could go for call here to get more aggressive, but I don't think we really need to. They're going to bring out a Kamakiri here. And I think, honestly, I do make a misplay here. I do Snatch Steal the Kamakiri and then go for Battle here. If they've got MST in the battle phase, that's really annoying for us. Most people don't, you know, hold the MST when a card is Snatch Stolen, so I can have the read that this will be fine. But I think what I should have done is just smashing around the Kamakiri here, attacking for 17. But I get kind of greedy. I want to go for lethal here, so I do indeed do that. They go for widespread on the Assailant. They take the 14. Well, we've got this call for the Kaiku, and that will indeed go through. So yeah, we'll deal that last bit of lethal damage, and that'll be the end of the game. Looks like that last set what they call the Haunt of their own, but with no monster in the grave, they can't do anything about that. They also bricked on some Ultimate Insect level 5 and the Doom Dozer. And that's really this deck's biggest weakness. If you can deprive them of, you know, getting their recruiters off and thinning out their deck, and, you know, they draw into their bricks, then it can be really awkward for them to recover. So that is something to keep in mind if you do want to play the Insect deck for yourself, or if you're playing against the Insect deck. That is probably the deck's biggest weakness, and we did manage to exploit it well here. But this wasn't the only game I got with the deck. I also have a deck that, you know, is a bit more meta that I faced off against, so let's dive into that one now. Okay, we get a game against Dumptruck, a frequent gets on channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We do tie for the first one, but luckily we do win the rock, paper, scissors for the second, so we will be going first here. If you enjoy this sort of Reaper gameplay, by the way, definitely subscribe to the channel. I will be having a lot more Reaper gameplay videos coming up. And also, you know, we'll be having other formats that I've covered in the past and formats that I'll cover in the future. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely subscribe to be notified when that happens. But this is a bit of a weird hand for me. I just set the Reaper, set the Judgment here. If they do have, like, you know, MST or Heavy for the Judgment, then that's, you know, it is what it is. But I don't really have a way to stop a big OTK push, so I do want to just set the Reaper because, you know, if they've got like Sidra as a Borg will, you know, we're just losing that game either way probably. But if they've got like a Reaper of their own to hit in for here for 300, or if they just summon out a Sidra Stein, go for a big push right away, then that's a bit awkward for us. So I do just set the Reaper here past. They go for Breaker here. They will pump the Solemn though. It's a bit unfortunate, but luckily we do manage to have the Reaper, so we can wall up against that. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw Heavy Storm here. We have a couple options here. I could go Heavy and Rhoda out like a DD Assailant, attack over the Breaker, attack in for 3, rip a card out of hand. I think in hindsight, that's probably the best move that I can do here. I think that is the move to do, but instead I just go for a Rhoda, grab Zalug, and get really greedy here. So I go for Zalug. I smashing the Breaker, but they do have an enemy controller here. So in this case, like, it probably wouldn't matter too much, because if I'd gone Heavy like right away, they would have gone Econ, you know, target the Reaper, gotten rid of that. And then, I mean, I could have rotated for Zalug here and then smashing afterwards and then gotten a hand rip in. So I think I did missequence this. I wasn't expecting Econ. I was honestly expecting like a battle trap instead. But I still feel like, yeah, I definitely could have sequenced this better. And if I did sequence this better, I would have gotten a hand rip here, which definitely could have made a fairly big difference. I'm just going to set the Heavy, pass back to them. Hopefully they'll set background in that. They've got a Heavy of their own, though, so they're able to clear our Heavy. And then they're going to go for Snatch on the Reaper, pop that, bring out a Tomato, go for Will. And now we're really suffering here, because they're able to use the Will, bring out a Sangan here, bring out a Reaper of their own, and then get in for 13. So I think, honestly, the best move here would have not been to go greedy off the Zalug and gone for an Assailant instead, and just beaten over the Breaker that way. It would have been much better in this sort of scenario, because they couldn't crash like a Tomato into it. But now we're in a really tough spot. We do draw Warrior Lady, which is pretty good here. So we can go for Warrior Lady, attack into the Sangan there, banish that, and get it out of here. And then we can set the pre-mat here to dodge around the Reaper, pass back to them. And they're going to switch that Reaper defense, pass back to us. We draw an MSC here, which isn't the most useful thing in the world, but we can set that, pass back to them. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Sidra here, which doesn't really do anything, but I do special summon it out just to get it out of hand. This does turn on their Zaborg, which was a bit awkward for me. But I think it's ultimately fine here. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Sakura. We're going to set that, pass back to them. and they are going to go for Brain Con on our side. That's a bit scary to see. They're just going to attack in for 21. That's perfectly fine. And then main 2, they're going to tribute that off for a tribute set. Okay, that's kind of interesting here. I feel like we can get over most of the tribute sets in this format with a Kaiku, so we do just go for that. They go for Raigeki Break on our Kaiku, and we'll just pass back to them. They're going to flip this side right here, attack in for 21. And we got Saku for that, so we'll manage to clear that. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Dark Hole, which is pretty good. We're just going to Dark Hole the board here. And then we are going to pre-mat to just get the aggressive pressure going. And they do have MST for that, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, that won't go through. But, you know, it is ultimately pretty fine here. They're going to pass back to us. We draw a Sangan here. This does turn on their siders if we bring out Sangan, but they could just be bricked down to Monarch. So, I feel pretty okay about summing out that Sangan, attacking in. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We drew a Book of Moon here, which is pretty good. It can dodge around things like, you know, BrainCon or Econ, etc. So I feel pretty good about this. We set the book, pass back to them. They're going to pass back to us. So we're doing pretty good here. We could bring out Exile, just up the clock a little bit, but I think it's fine. Just keep poking in with Sangan. Save Exile for later here. They're going to set 1, go for meta on the Treeborn for a Thousand Eyes. We do have book for the Thousand Eyes, so I can, you know, sort of set that down, but they do have Comfy to rip that Exiled Force out of hand, which is a bit unfortunate here. We do have a smashing here. Doesn't really matter. We'll just attack into the Thousand Eyes. Not set the smashing. I think I could have because they're out of Heavy Storm. So there's not really a risk to setting the smashing here. Well, I guess Mobius is a risk, so if they do have Mobius, then that's awkward for us. But we do get a search off the Sangan. We're going to grab this Spirit Reaper here. We do have smashing for the Zaborg. I'm not sure if we want to summon out the Reaper to rip a card out of hand after we go for smashing here, but DD Assailant makes things a lot easier for us. We smashing the Zaborg, summon out Assailant, attacking for 17. I do feel like we're in a really, really good position here. So they're going to bring back that Treeborn Frog. Unfortunately, they do have that engine online now. They're going to bring out Exile, pop the Assailant, then set 1, pass back to us. We just MST that in the end phase, just in case. And we draw a Rhoda here, which is pretty good, but I'm not really sure what we're grabbing off that. So we're just going to set the Reaper, set the Rhoda, pass back to them. And they do have Zaborg, and that is one of the few things that do kill us here. I figured that we could set up for, like, you know, going for Rhoda next turn, searching out a Warrior, and then getting over the Treeborn, getting in for damage. And they'd already used up 1 Zaborg. I don't know how many Zaborgs they're playing, but I figured, like, this gets through most things, and it probably would kill them through most things. But unfortunately, it did not turn out that way, and we did manage to lose this game. I think definitely in the beginning, I could have sequenced better to potentially avoid this outcome. I could have been less greedy off the Rhoda search as well. So I do think that, you know, that definitely was a winnable game for us, especially given how close it was after I messed up in the beginning. So I definitely think we could have won that game. This game, though, is definitely a game that we are very likely winning because we got Comfy and Death Shoot in the opener. We did bring the Death Shoots because this is against Monarch, and also, you know, we're going first, so it gets even better there. We also did bring in Masks of Restrict as well to stop the Monarch game plan. But, you know, of course, if we don't draw them, then, you know, they won't really come up. But we do just take the Will because they've got the Exiled Force. They've got pre-mat to bring back Exiled Force. So they've got a way to trigger Will no matter what. I don't want them setting that up. So I do just get rid of the Will there. And then I set Spirit Reaper, Book, and Death Shoot here. I can Death Shoot and standby, just get rid of a problematic card from hand. And let's see what they got. They got Tomato, Snatch, Exiled Force, Pre-mat, and Zaborg here. That's a bit of an interesting hand. I think of those, I'm most scared of Tomato because Tomato is the most annoying for me to deal with. If they go Exiled, Pop, or Reaper, I'm honestly okay with that. We can bring out Kaiku, attack indirectly, banish the Exiled from Grave, and then they can't bring that back with pre-mat. They can snatch our Kaiku, but we got booked for that, so I feel ultimately okay about this. So I'm sort of setting up that game plan. And they do indeed go for Exiled, Pop, or Reaper. But again, I feel like we're pretty good in this scenario. We draw Assailant as well, which is pretty good follow-up for later. But we attack him with Kaiku, banish the Exiled Force there. And so now they can't bring that back off pre-mat. And if they go for Snatch on our Kaiku, we can book it down, which we will indeed do. They unfortunately do draw into another Tomato here, which is quite unfortunate. I was hoping that they wouldn't do that. They show that they did indeed shuffle the deck. You know, which occasionally that does happen. You're playing 3 Tomatoes. You're likely to draw one afterwards. We will Dark Hole the Tomato there, attack in for 300 with the Reaper. They can pre-mat the Tomato back, go for Zaborg here, but we do get to rip one of those combo pieces out of hand. So they, you know, pitched the Zaborg. I was kind of hoping to hit the pre-mat instead because I feel like pre-mat's a bit more versatile in the Monarch deck than Zaborg is, but they're just going to bring out another Tomato attack into our Reaper here, deal 1100. And then they're going to pass back to us. Just smashing, that's about as good a draw as we could have gotten there. We smashing their Tomato. We attack in for Assailant and the Reaper. So this does rip the pre-mat out of hand. I feel really good about this position. If they draw Dark Hole at the top, that's awkward. But Warriors are pretty good in a top deck war. So that's pretty good. I mean, I'd say Warriors are getting the top deck war, and then I draw into the second dust shoot. But like, realistically, we're in such a good position that even drawing into dust shoot is pretty good for us. It could, potentially bait out like removal or something. So I think it's ultimately fine. You might wonder why I attacked into the Reaper here while they had no cards in hand. It did actually affect the clock. If we didn't attack into Reaper there, it would have taken 3 turns as opposed to 2. So I felt like attacking with Reaper was the right thing to do. We're gonna go into game 3 here, and this is a pretty, well, I don't know how good an opener it is, especially after a Comfy. Like, that's really rough here. Comfy ripping out the Reaper is really unfortunate. So now they know our entire hand. They also were able to rip out our 1 monster, so I don't like that. We're just gonna set this, DD Sail and then set 4 pass. I feel like they probably don't have heavy, or else they would have taken the Solemn. But even if they do have heavy, we do have Solemn for that. And so I want to set as many of these back row as possible because I figure they know about some back row. I want to, if they go for a blind MST here, I want them to sort of have a bit of a tougher time sniping something good. So they do go for blind MST, popping the Saku. That's a bit unfortunate, that is removal. But I think it's ultimately okay. They go for Mobius here. And I do think about exactly what to do here because I could Solemn the Mobius and protect 2 of my back row. But I figure I'm bottomless. If I bottomless this, like, that's pretty good as well. And I don't want to, like, go down to 4,000 this early in the game. So what I figure is like, okay, they only have a 1/3 chance of hitting Solemn and MST with the Mobius, which would be the ultimate disaster case because I want to bottomless that Mobius. And I mean, I guess I could let the Mobius go and then it attacked into Assailant here, banishes that way, but I want the Assailant on field for the monster. So yeah, I think I want to bottomless this Mobius, and 2/3 of the time they hit the bottomless with the Mobius. So I figure it's okay losing 1 additional card here because I will be able to get rid of that Mobius. So I just let this go through. And unfortunately, they do pick the 2 cards that are not the bottomless. So that is just so rough for me. Luckily, though, I am able to get in for 2,700 here, cut off the Stein axis, which is very important in this format. So I think ultimately it's okay in the long run, but it's still like really awkward. And I really would have liked to have kept at least one of those back row there. They're going to go for meta on the Treeborn, suck up that Assailant there with the Thousand Eyes there, attack in for 700 over the Sangan, and we search out an Exiled Forest to deal with that Restrict. It's a bit awkward because then they can go for a Monarch later, but I think it's ultimately okay to do this. We go for the Exiled, we set a Saku here because I figure, what are the odds they have another Mobius to pop our back row? I mean, it's Monarch, so maybe pretty high, but, I think it's ultimately fine to set the Saku here. Otherwise they could draw a Reaper, go for Reaper, and hit into that. So we're just going to set this Reaper, pass back to them. If they've got Zaborg, this is a bit awkward, but I do like setting up a defense here. They're going to summon out a Warrior Lady attack into the Reaper. We just let that get banished. We can save the Saku for a better play later. We draw Snatch, which is kind of useless for us. We're going to pass back to them. They pass back to us. We draw Dark Hole here. I don't really want to go for it now because the Treeborn still just comes back. So it's basically a 1-for-1, and I don't really feel like it's useful if I'm not going for a big push yet. They summon out a Tomato attack in for 14, and since we are going to Dark Hole this in the following turn, I feel fine just holding the Dark Hole. We're going to go for the Dark Hole there, popping their entire board. And we don't set the TT here because I figure we can just use the Saku if they bring out like a Monarch or something. If they bring out Thestalos and rip the TT, that's a bit awkward for us, but Saku still does clear that. So I think it's ultimately okay. They're going to just pass back to us. We draw a Rhoda here, so that's pretty good. But we don't want to go for it yet because I feel like just clearing the Treeborn Frog and leaving a monster on our side of the field is not the best here. I could have gone Snatch on the Frog, gone for Reinforcement for a Don Zalug, attacked him for 14, but then they get back a Frog next turn anyways. So it's a bit awkward there. I'm not sure the one hand rip is worth it. They go for a Breaker here, so they'll pop the Saku. So maybe that's an argument for setting the TT as well, because if I had set the TT as well, I could have popped the Breaker instead and prevented this from going through, but unfortunately we did not do that. And yeah, we do draw Assailant though, which is pretty nice, so we can summon out that, attack over the Breaker there, and then main 2, we can set the TT, pass back to them, and they're going to go for a BrainCon on our Assailant. That's a bit awkward for us here. They'll attack in for 17, but the life points are still relatively equal, so I feel okay about this. They will then, in main 2, tribute over the Assailant. We will TT that. So we have wiped the board, so now going for a Reinforcement the Army for Zalug can be pretty good, but we want to go for Comfy here just to see what they've got just in case. We see that they've got an enemy controller, BrainCon, a Zaborg, and a Snatch. That is really bad for us, especially because going for the Comfy drops us down to 16. So we're in a really tough spot, actually, in this position. Yeah, they're just so tricky. I think what I want to do is we send Zaborg, so that way they can't, like, summon out Zaborg off the Treeborn, pop our stuff, get in that way, because we don't have a way to stop it. I feel like we can ultimately play around Snatch, Braincon, and Econ by just, setting a monster here or not bringing out a monster at all. But we kind of do have to bring out a monster just to get aggressive, so I do go for Rhoda here on Zalug, try and rip a card out of hand. And I still don't lose, even if they bring out Treeborn Frog and attack after this. So I do feel like this is ultimately okay. We do have Snatch for the crackback as well, so I feel like I kind of have to do this. But there are some draws that do get them out of this. They go for an Econ here, take control of our Don Zalug. And unfortunately, they drew one of the outs to this. So they're going to go for Will, attack in with Don, and then bring out another monster in main too. So, yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. But, I'm not really sure we had a good way to fight through all those sort of things that take control of our stuff. Because, the Warrior deck can't really deal 3,400 damage in a turn. And I do think that, as I mentioned in the deck breakdown, that's one of the strengths that Bazoo Return has over it, where, both decks are doing a similar sort of grindy game plan and getting in a lot of damage early, potentially. But the Bazoo deck can deal a ton of damage in the late game, which is very good in situations like this. But unfortunately, we weren't able to pull it out. I think with better play, I definitely could have won this match. Although, who would have known if I had won game 1, then Dumbtrick would have gone first in game 2, so that would have changed things for sure. But yeah, it's just very, very awkward here. And we didn't draw into any of our restricts as well, which is a bit awkward against the Monarch deck. They were able to set up Frog early. So when you're in this position, it can be a bit of an uphill battle for Warriors to come back from, but I do think we probably could have done it with better play. I'm definitely inexperienced with the deck, so definitely let me know any misplays that you saw that I made in the comments down below. But I do think that overall the Warrior deck is still very good, even though I did lose against Monarchs with it here. They were very close games, and I think it definitely could have gone either way if I had, played a little bit better. And I do think that it's still a tier 1 deck in this format, just like it is in GOAT, just like it is in Cyber. It just does take a lot of skill to pilot well. But if you do have that skill, if you've played the deck in GOAT format for a while and are very good at it, it's definitely something that you can pilot to success in Reaper format as well. But let me know what you think about the deck down in the comments below. Do you think it's better than I'm making it out to be? Do you think it's worse than making it out to be? I always look forward to our discussions there. And if you want to play games in Reaper format or any other format that I featured on the channel, head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. It's a great place to find games in this and any other format that I featured on the channel. We'll also be holding a Reaper tournament coming up later this month, so definitely join that if you're interested in getting more Reaper gameplay. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to support me directly, I also have a Patreon, link in the description down below. And if you sign up for the Patreon and get shout out in these videos, big shout outs to Tyler Compton, GeoMyFest, Rinswin, Porkchop, Coon, Brendan Knocker, and Dumbtruck. It really means a lot that you all support me this way and encourages me to make more videos like this. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.